started. Welcome to the Advisory Parks Board meeting, May 14th, 2018. For those that have not attended before, just kind of a few rules or things to remember. Please silence your cell phone. If you do need to take a call, please step out in the hall. After roll call, the approval of minutes from the last meeting, we'll go through the agenda. City staff will present the agenda item, and then the board will ask any questions, and then it will be opened up to the floor. Once you come up, if you have any public comments, please state your name, address, and keep your comments to less than 5 minutes to allow everyone to have an opportunity to speak. And then once all public comment is completed, then it will come back to the board for further discussion. Roll call.
Davis.
Here.
Dirth.
Here.
Royal.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Kaufman. Miller.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Schuessler.
Here.
Wohler.
Amy, if I could real quickly.
Yep.
I'd like to introduce Scott Groyle. Scott is our new board member. Not yet. That has, he has applied to replace Bill Gwizeski, who stepped back from the board a couple months back. So Scott, I don't know if you want to give some information on you?
We'll take that really slow. As you said, my name's Scott Groyle, longtime resident of the city of Oshkosh. My wife and I have lived here since 1985. We've been married for 35 years. We have 2 kids. They're all grown up right now, have their own careers, 2 grandkids. Before I retired, I'm officially retired in January of 2016. I spent 35 years in law enforcement. Most of those years with the city of Oshkosh, including the last 8.5 years as the police chief here in the city of Oshkosh. I enjoy working in the yard, golfing, camping, playing a little guitar, and I'm looking forward to continuing to serve in the community.
Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. Thank you.
Just couldn't stand being retired. Good job.
Minutes from April 9th. Any comments, questions?
A motion to approve.
Second.
You can voice vote.
Roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Any citizen statements not on the agenda? All right, we'll get to new business. Review and discuss preferred concept plan for Roush Park.
I'll kick off the discussion, and then we have John Kinnear from Rattler Corporation who is here. This project was actually a request by the Neighborhood Association out at Sawyer Creek Neighborhood Association. They did receive some funding through the planning department through their Healthy Neighborhoods initiative to help us work on a master plan for Roush Park. If you're not familiar with the park site, it's up on the screen. It's approximately 41 acres. It is sits adjacent to Carl Traeger School. There's currently about 10 to 11 acres that have a trail system through it. And then there's approximately another 30 acres to the far west that is essentially undeveloped at this point. A lot of wetlands, floodplain areas. John will talk more about that. So it's really, really restricted on what we'll be able to do on the site. We've had a number of public meetings for this project. As I stated in my memo in the packet, we had meetings on February 14th, March 22nd, and April 25th. All these meetings were had at Carl Traeger School with approximately 20 to 30 citizens attending each meeting. We also had a couple POCL survey questions go out for the master plan. You'll hear tonight there's a couple of items that are currently in the preferred or the concept plan that have garnered a lot of input from the community. One of those is some low-level downward pointing trail lighting on the existing path behind Traeger School. That has been an item that there's been a lot of public comment and discussion about, as well as the potential for some outdoor exercise equipment being located along that trail. So we had a POCL survey go out on April 4th. It just closed last week. and I pulled up the numbers today. And again, POCO, for those of you on the board, it's another avenue to get citizen engagement, citizen input. We had the public input meetings at the school, again, 3 of those. That's another way we got engagement from the citizens. This board meeting is another opportunity to get that input, and then there also be the opportunity as this plan potentially goes forward to the council. So again, the survey is used as another avenue to help us get some input. But to let you know, we had 296 responses to the survey. The first question essentially was, are you in favor of downward focusing lights on the existing trail? 76% of the respondents to that said yes, they would like to see lights in that area. And then the next question was, are you in favor of installation of outdoor exercise equipment? That really came down to 51% stating yes, 49 no. So that one was obviously a lot more closely represented on both sides. So I wanted to share that information with you as you listen to the comments. I'm going to turn it over to John. John's going to walk you through the process. And then we also have Kate Mann from the police department here. Kate was able to attend some of our public input meetings to talk about CPTED. CPTED is crime prevention through environmental design, and she will talk a little bit more about that as far as some of the things we talked about, making it a little more visible out here, whether that's reducing some of the shrubbery or adding some shrubbery for the residents, some of those things, but also to talk about her thoughts on some of the lighting and why that might be something we want to consider. So Kate will help us out in that manner as well.
I know the lasers don't show up, but I can walk through it. Is there a mouse?
I have a mouse.
Yeah, that'd be great. Then I can point to stuff with the arrow. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you very much, Ray. John Kinnear with Rattler Corporation. We were brought on as the design consultant to work on the Roush Park master plan. And we've participated in staff input in all of the community input sessions to date, the 3 that Ray mentioned. Initially, we did an existing conditions study. The map that you're looking at here before you as well shows the property. It's this irregular shaped piece of property just south of Sawyer Creek. The creek then enters the site and then proceeds to the west and moves out to the southwest. The areas that you see all throughout the site in this lighter green are all of the wetland areas that we have delineated for the project. So we had a delineation done. A formal report has not been submitted. We won't do that until we get into the development phase, which we're not to yet. We're at the conceptual design phase. So all these green areas represent wetland throughout the site. So you can see that a good majority of the site is wetland, would be a challenge to develop. But you can also see some of these pockets of upland area. And what those are really is opportunities to make connections, to minimize cost on boardwalks and things of that nature. So we looked at some of those connections I'll go through in a moment. The blue that you do see is the identified waterway throughout the project. As you can see on the west side, begins to get much wider. There's an area midstream, we'll say, that it does also widen out as well. As Ray mentioned, there's a couple existing pathway connections that's in tan. The trailway systems that you see in tan that do connect up to Traeger, that do go through the site and connect into the adjacent neighborhood to the north. Those are called out in tan. So with the public input sessions, we really wanted to pull and discuss with the neighborhood elements that they would like to see in the staff surveys as well. When we sat down with staff, what types of development would we like to see in Roush Park? So what we heard definitely was an expansion of the existing trails. So in red, what you see here is future trail expansion networks. And then where do those go to? We really looked at the future development of this area and the surrounding areas and found this to be a very good opportunity to make north-south connections between more recent potential future development and future development that's down the line a little bit more. So we did talk to Planning and Zoning Economic Development about future developments and found that there's very good opportunity as we get to the western part of the site, not only to develop trails in the upland areas, so we don't need boardwalks, but also to put in one stream crossing here and connect north to south these future developments. And those developments will bring us down through future housing opportunities and connections and give us future potential connections to the YMCA, which is across the street, and other elements and connections. Also, through some boardwalk, we have future potential connections. We have talked just briefly with the school district about making connections. They're working on some grading, some drainage projects here, so exactly where a future connection would take place, we're identifying that, but that'll be solidified in the future. And then also, to get to this western portion, we do need to cross, wetlands bisect this entire site. There's a west half and an east half, so to speak. So by minimizing the amount of boardwalk, and we put some examples of boardwalks here, low impact, either on feet or helical pile boardwalks, to make the connections in the future of this future pathway. And again, you can see the future connections here. We did have, at each of the community input meetings, we had about 20 to 30 people attend each of those meetings. We did get input. We presented the SEPTED opportunities with lighting. We also got some very good input on the natural features that are here. The department has already begun some invasive species removal. Some of the buckthorn removal has taken place on the north side. Through some of the feedback that we obtained at the meetings, we heard that a vegetative buffer would be preferred along the northern side where the main residential abuts the park boundary. From this point here that I'm highlighting to the nearest house is about 275 feet, to give you some perspective of distance. But we do want to enhance with a native vegetative buffer along the northern side where that buckthorn removal has been. The remainder of the site would be proposed to be left natural, to be maintained and encouraged to grow in its natural state. That was one of the big positives that were identified at these meetings. Lighting, as Ray mentioned, we have the main existing path. We're showing minimal downward lighting throughout the path to promote visibility at nighttime or after dusk. The park is open after dusk much of the year. Many of the folks that would utilize this path would be able to utilize it with lighting. Again, as Ray mentioned, he mentioned the POLCO at the meetings. It was about 2/3 against and 1/3 for when we took a hand-raising poll at the site. So there was some opposition from the immediate neighborhood to the lighting. However, there was also some support for those who would be using it after hours or shift work individuals in the community that would utilize that path. The very light green areas are the areas we identified for exercise stations. These are very passive, kind of low impact pieces of equipment. Some of you are probably familiar with the Park and Rec exercise equipment. And again, that was about 50-50 in the POLCO survey. But just some examples here of what those could be and how those can incorporate and other opportunities for more passive use, but very passive uses within this park. We didn't identify any real need for building structure. Again, the floodplain limitations really hold back how much we can do in the floodplain areas. Structures far into the site, maintenance considerations, we didn't find a real need for restroom buildings, shelters, things of that nature to be constructed. There was high support for continuation of the trails throughout the site and beyond. So that's really what we have before you is an extension of the existing trails, preservation of the natural areas that are in place, enhancement and placement of a vegetative buffer between the park site and the properties to the north, physical fitness, passive physical fitness stations along the existing trail, trail enhancement, and downward lighting as mentioned previously. So that's what we have before you this evening. We haven't gotten into detailed costs yet. We want to get feedback from this group tonight and see what direction and input that you have this evening. We look forward to that. Ray, if there's anything else I can touch on, I'd be happy to do that. Otherwise, I can take questions.
No, I think, if you don't mind, we'll have, Kate, if you just want to come up and give some background on SEPTED for the board members and give your perspective and your training a little bit, I think. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Kate Mann. I'm the Public Affairs Crime Prevention Officer for the City of Oshkosh. And I've recently went through 40 hours of training in SEPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design. And in that class, they talked about lighting a lot. And they said that it's a good idea to prevent crime, but you have to choose the right type of lighting to fit the area. So for a trail system like this, I would recommend having pedestrian scale lighting. So it would be approximately 6 to 8 feet tall, and it would have shield on it so that it would project the light down, that you would avoid the light pollution. That would be everything going upwards. And I know it was a concern of the neighbors. They don't want their backyards to be illuminated. And again, we want to choose the correct lighting so that it's just lighting up the path, the walking path, because I think that's really our main objective. So SEPTED looks at 3 different groups when it's looking at an area. It looks at the normal users, which would be the people that live in the area that are going to use the trail, families, people going walking, running. The abnormal users are going to be the people that are up to no good. They're there to do damage, vandalism, do whatever type of crime. And then the third group is the observer. So that would be us. So like the first responders, the people working for the parks, things of that nature. So we want to add more normal users to the area. So we want more families to use it, people going out running, jogging, doing whatever, walking in the area after nighttime. And I think that they would feel safer and more leaning towards using the trail if there was some lighting. And I think that having the lighting too should deter the abnormal users to coming into that area. As a first responder, I think it would help us. If we had a medical emergency, it would help us locate the person quicker. And if we had some type of weapons call, we could see that person possibly from a distance, and we can come up on foot and have us not backlight ourselves with flashlights trying to find this person, be able to locate them quicker and safer. Questions at all? Or add?
Let's talk about some of the design
Sure.
opportunities that. So what we looked at in terms of types of lights, you can see we've included the style of light that's been incorporated in many of the city parks. We would like to carry that style through, however, at an 8-foot height pole. It was called out a 6-foot high pole would invite tinkering and perhaps some vandalism. An 8-foot high pole would still offer that low level lighting and the ability to have shielding. The style that the city has selected allows for the throw to not go straight up and allow for the prevention of light pollution in general of the area. So that's the half acorn style that you have allows for that. In addition to that, what you can order as a piece of this custom product, it's already a custom product, is a house side shield. So what that does is basically shield the light fixture structure from 180 degrees to even closer parameters to focus the light forward and completely cut off the light from projecting backwards. So where you see these as clear all the way through, the light fixture itself would be shielded. It's a simple aluminum shield that goes onto the back of the ballast and structure. If it's LED, it would attach to the driver portion of the light, and it would focus all of the light forward. Having LED, and I can check into that further, what type these are, but LED you can focus even further ahead with house side shielding, so you have full cutoff from 8 feet going up. It's fully cut off, and then from 180 degrees in, you can have full control and cutoff per fixture. Each fixture can be custom fit with that. So we can still maintain this style of lighting, have the half acorn shape, 8 foot high, and then what that does is allow point-to-point illumination along the trail. And any fixture would be facing with house side shielding to the north and be facing south to the school property. So the parking lot lighting, for example, would be a lot more prevalent to the naked eye, to the observer, than the what would be closer yet more cut-off lighting. The parking lot lighting that you see here would be definitely a standout feature when you're looking from the north to the south. But those factors and features of lighting are possible. That's what we would recommend. Moving forward is very focused house side shielding with full vertical cutoff by using that specialized acorn cover.
John, did you guys look at bollards like we have in Riverwalk, which are even more less invasive?
Yep, those get to be much shorter
Yes.
and have the same shielding capabilities. What we've found with bollard lighting is you need more, and then they illuminate from pretty much the waist up. So you really don't have that face-to-face recognition, and that's something SEPTED principles as well as face recognition.
Well, that comes into whether you're using high-pressure sodium or low-pressure sodium lights.
Right, well, right,
And
yeah.
or yellow luminant, because
Yeah.
what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish the lighting to depict a person, a color rendition of clothing?
Right.
Because
it's-
light invasion can
Yeah.
go in a whole different, because I
Yeah.
have advanced SEPTED, so.
Yeah, 'cause
I could go in details.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's
I
a
don't
lot
want
of
to.
nuance to it as to what you really end up with. I think the base concept here is to have it lit 8 foot so that you can have activity monitoring. The way that we have them spaced here, you're not going to have full coverage of that trail, but
Right.
it's going to give you point-to-point lighting.
It's a walking trail is mostly what you're illuminating, because it appears that there's not a lot of support for recreational equipment.
Right,
So then it's more of a less illuminating the trail for safety and
right.
things like that.
The trail is the major element here.
Right.
So to make it more accessible to citizens in the neighborhood, around the neighborhood, having it lit, I know the opportunities, we'd have to look at the trail study, but the opportunities for lit trails are minimal within the city. A lot of it's the roadways that are lit is the only option. So having some form of recreational trail adjacent to a neighborhood in a growing area that may develop sooner than later around the park. We felt that having the existing portion of the trail lit in the master plan, getting a budget item established would be beneficial to this, so more users can utilize this park. That is the main feature of the park. You're correct. That's really it, and then some exercise equipment. So we don't have athletic fields proposed here. We don't have rentable shelters. The land just doesn't really support that, but what it does support is a nice network of trail systems. Lighting the trail is one way to open it up to more users.
John, let's just give me an idea of square footage. What is one of these lights square footage wise? Kate, maybe both can chime in.
Yeah, it really depends. We're going to get some throw off of these lights. We haven't gone to the point to developing photometrics yet.
Okay.
But we would do that if this idea was to advance. We would actually get photometrics on here, get the proper spacing, show the glare, not only the photometric coverage, but the glare coverage as well. So where you would perceive this from, we would get a glare map produced as well, so you could see the impact on adjacent properties. But the photometric layout, once we actually go into development to the next level, we didn't want to go that far yet. We wanted to
Okay.
get your input at this point in time, but Bill will get that to you with the photometric coverage.
So we can scale these lights any way we want, is what you're telling me, right? I mean,
At this point in time, there's nothing set in stone here.
Okay.
Besides the idea
Okay.
of lighting. But yes, pole height, 8, 10 feet, pole spacing, whatever illumination we want on that trail, we can develop with you from this point forward. So it's
Okay.
very fluid at this point in time.
okay.
So in the on the east part of the trail, it looks like there with houses to would be the west, and I think to this, I guess to the east of those on the very far side, it looks like there could be.
Up here.
It'd be hard to aim those lights certain directions because with the 180 blocking.
Yeah.
So, and then even kind of on the as you get to the neighborhood over there to the east, also down a little bit further. Yeah.
Here?
So how
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like there's a lot of places to point those lights.
Yeah, these are highly vegetated areas as well. And there's been some very good points made during the meetings. If we're going to light this, why don't we light the whole thing? What's the point? So I support that. However, we're limited to the property that the city owns at this point in time. That's why we're only proposing lights to be on the trails on the property that we own. So some discussions with easements and folks that do have control over this land, that could certainly be expanded to make a street-to-street connection with the lighting. What we're proposing here is to light the property that is owned by the city of Oshkosh. So yeah, that can certainly, Tony, be very focused lighting. The downward cutoff on that is what would allow control of the lighting in the spill in the direction of the lighting. It's not going to be a luminary that's going to project upward at all.
Can you remind me of what was the 275 feet? That's the lights from the backyard?
Oh, yeah, right up here, this leg of the path, this bend in the trail is the closest portion of the trail to the adjacent properties. There's, what I've measured that to is a deck to the nearest home in the backyard here. That's 275 feet from the trail to the deck in the backyard.
And that's the shortest distance?
That's the closest distance that is from the trail to. Now here on the east side, we didn't hear about any comments here, but here on the east side at the right-of-way that comes in is the closest point to a home itself. So I just want to be clear that these properties here, and this is measured, we have the field dimensions from our survey that was done, and also from GIS data, which is from the orthophotography that's provided by the city.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Board?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Officer Mann before she steps away? Any other questions from the board? All right, open it up to public comment. Please step up to the microphone and state your name and address and keep comments to less than 5 minutes.
My name is Karen Carl. I'm not a very good speaker. My notes are scattered all over this piece of paper that I got on my window the other night. I'm going
Address,
to do the
please.
best I can.
Address, please.
3081 Sawyer Creek Drive. I live on right where you want to put all those lights. Those lights are going to cause a problem for those of us here who live on Sawyer Creek Drive. I don't care if they're 6 feet high, 8 feet high, or God forbid, 10 feet high. I'd like to ask all you board members, I'm sure you all live in town someplace, and you have a yard that ends someplace. Please raise your hand if you would like lights on the end of your property that are going to be, I don't know how far apart they are because nobody's told me that yet. Please raise your hand if you want lights on the end of your property. Where you want to put them on the end of my property on that trail. I don't see any hands.
Well, I guess you're asking a very generic question. I like streetlights. I'm a safety guy, so.
I have streetlights. I have streetlights right in the front of my yard. I don't want streetlights on the front of my yard as well as in the back of my yard. I'm happy with my streetlights. I think we can prevent crime by having the streetlights, and thank you, officers. My daughter happened to be an officer for a number of years. I appreciate your services as a policewoman. I'm upset about this. I didn't make the last meeting. I was celebrating my 60th wedding anniversary with my husband, so I didn't make the last meeting. I understand that having lived there only 2.5 years and having moved from the country, which I'm a little sorry that I came to town because of all the constrictions that you put on us people. This is a young neighborhood, and I witness it every single day, particularly on weekends, when a lot of young families, their strollers, their kids in strollers and pulling their wagons, their kids in bikes and their dogs. This is a young neighborhood, and I think people who use this trail are also young. I understand that some people who work second shift want to take a walk at night. Great. Do it under the streetlights. Don't do it under the lights in my backyard. How many people at night walking are observing nature? This is a nature park. How many little plants can you see at night? How many bushes can you really identify? How many birds can you see at night? None. This is a daytime thing to take a walk in the park or on this nature trail. None of my immediate neighbors, who I understand were at this last meeting that I couldn't attend, want these lights. You ask for our input, I'm giving you my input. I feel very strongly about this. I'm only one person. What is the cost for these lights going to be? I've never heard any estimate of cost to put in all of this. Is this going to be for those few people who want to walk that trail at night? It's not going to help the people on the weekends and the daytime who are walking this trail. At night, these young people put their kids to bed. They're not going to be taking walks unless they get a babysitter or unless they take turns walking at night. Again, I say I'm not a good speaker. I'm not very well put together. I just made a couple notes on this today. I see that you're going to be talking about the removal of buckthorn. I have yet to see anything done on the side of the creek that I live on. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I have had several people in our neighborhood who have done elaborate work to try to pick up brush and items from the creek to make it a more desirable place to live. One man worked several hours on a Sunday afternoon in the muck, picking up stuff and throwing it up on the side of the creek in hopes that somebody would come along and pick up the rest, as they said they would do. I'm probably red in the face, but I appreciate your listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad, is there any plan on removing any buckthorn in that area?
We're going to continue with invasive removal
Okay.
as we can and have time, absolutely. And
Okay.
also want to look to plant desirable shrubbery and trees at that point too. So, yes.
Thanks. Do we allow dogs on this trail?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On leash.
Any other public comment? Please come up.
My name's Paul Ellefson. I live at 3011 Sawyer Creek Drive. For the secretary, I'll give you my notes when I'm done, if that would help you out. I appreciate your time tonight. Just a quick history. Roush Park was started as 2 bridges and a path connecting Westlake Farms, the meadow on Sawyer Creek, and Carl Traeger School. It has long been used for students to walk to Carl Traeger to save on busing costs, as well as a walking path for nearby families. It has been defined as a passive area with nature playing a prominent role by the City Parks Department and residents. Over the years, the school is built on the natural premise, at one time adding a prairie adjacent to the building. Funding and maintenance for this area has often been a conflict. During the winter, snow was not cleared for the students, as neither the Oshkosh Area School District nor the Oshkosh Parks Department could agree on who was responsible. After concerns were raised, boundaries were drawn on these responsibilities. While this conflict is currently better, when safety issues resulting from algae and moss-covered bridges create slipping hazards and frequent falls, especially kids on bikes, the Parks Department said there was no money in the budget for it. They suggested the Oshkosh Area School District could help with funding. That's a bridge that comes off of Roush Field, and it's very uneven, and multiple elevation changes with curves on the bridge. It has a standard railing on that bridge that does not have uprights. If it was my deck over 18 inches on my house, I would not get an occupancy permit. Neighbors have been told multiple times by both the Parks Department director and the self-appointed Sawyer Creek Neighborhood Association that they were not pursuing additional lighting and exercise equipment on the trail. Regardless of these assurances, it kept coming up in private requests and meetings. Many requests have been made to maintain the park, including the current trail, bridges, and invasive species such as buckthorn and wild parsnips that have overrun some of the areas of the park and neighboring properties. During the process for updating the current master plan, the community was told that the intent was to leave the area as natural as possible. At some point, the new plan changed the theme of the park to a passive area on the natural prairie. While the presentation included plans and requests for input, the input from the community and adjacent landowners was disregarded, especially when it came to the idea of lighting and exercise equipment. As an example of this is during the second input meeting for the public, a raised hand poll indicated that approximately 75% of the residents in attendance did not want lights and about 90% that did not want exercise equipment. A few days later, a poll was set up on an app poll call that asked only, do you think the trail should be lighted in Roush Park, and do you think exercise equipment should be in Roush Park? Neighbors raised concerns about this poll since it was not well publicized or easily accessible to some other residents. The results have been taken down so that it cannot quantify the exact response rate, but it was close to 0.5% of the community. What do you guys need here for a quorum? What percent?
One more than 50%.
One more than 50? So out of $10, you need $5.01 to make a decision, correct?
$6.
$6. For the poll, it would give you 6 cents out of $10 to make a decision on a poll. Helping you with the math. There are numerous improvements that could be considered. These have the potential to benefit the local community while not alienating neighborhood residents. Some of these ideas have attempted to be presented but warrant additional consideration. Some of the ideas that we have not had an opportunity to present because these meetings have been closed to the public and the input sessions we were there to listen, to get input, not get it. A restroom to benefit the many athletic fields at Carl Traeger School for the community and trail system. Currently many fields, playgrounds, and events, but not a single restroom for all that property you see and all the fields and everything at Carl Traeger School. As far as the neighborhood association, they've got money for the school for playground equipment and everything else, so it is a potential thing. Potential to light a field at Carl Traeger would require likely similar funding but would provide broader use to the community. An outdoor archery range in a new area that's pretty much wildlife you can't do much with. Off-road biking trail track area or something like that in the new area. Add additional park property with funds for future expansion, most likely westward. Maintain current trail, seal coat, and bridges. These have not been maintained. Adding weatherproofing, stain, or coating will expand service life and increase safety of the current wood structures. Raised walkways with railings to provide safety when falling or riding a bike. Many accidents have happened on this. While the improved surface off of Roush Field has made this better, that's on the bridge, the railings are still a potential for a significant issue with current design. This is a walking trail. There's no proposed benches on the trail because people weren't allowed to give input. I think that's one of the cheapest things we can do as a community. Fix a few areas of the current trail that require drainage so they're not underwater for long periods of time on rain. Walk their dog Sunday, there's still an area that's underwater and everything else is dry. It needs to be raised and needs to have a small little culvert put underneath it. Minimal work and effort and things. Nobody takes the input. Have a responsible plan for current and future control of the invasive plants and vegetation. While some buckthorn was cut down in the fall, it was not poisoned or cleaned up very well, but it wasn't poisoned. It's coming back. So it'll be back soon. Request and obtain permission from the school districts to allow access to dog walking on the school sidewalks during non-school days or hours for increased usage of Roush Park by residents that live on 20th Street or walking a dog using 20th Street as a loop. I was brought up at a meeting and the resident was told to call the city themselves or the school district and ask them. Encourage the city to find a more appropriate location for lights and exercise setting in the community that does not have flooding, wildlife, and biting insects that exist in a prairie environment. The exercise equipment would be much better placed in an area with a maintained environment with short grass, resulting in increased ability of use for all city residents. A plan to put lighting on the path and not connect it at the ends. It's lighting to nowhere, people. They're lighting a path, not a pathway. It's not connecting to the streets or anything else. How are you going to walk on it without a flashlight to get to the lighting? It's on the map. Particularly over the bridges where it's darkest as well as the biggest safety hazard, does not initially appear to be an improvement in the quality of life or expand use of the area for the residents. To put the light in the entire loop connecting to Roush Park and Sawyer Creek Drive would at least make the plan more reasonable use of taxpayer dollars. Please consider a trip to the area before voting to move this plan forward with a yes vote. A yes vote now encourages future planning of park master plans behind closed doors that do not include open meetings for input and ideas by city residents. It would continue to divide our community instead of bringing it together. Does anybody have any questions?
Paul, what meetings were closed to the public?
At the input meetings that they had input meetings at Carl Traeger School. I attended 3 of those meetings. At 2 of those meetings, I had a police officer tell me to sit down and stop talking during the input session.
Well, it doesn't mean that they weren't open to the public, though, right?
They were open to the public, but they weren't open for input. So all the input that was given, the meeting that we had where they asked about, and pretty much it was a raised hand poll on who wanted lights and who wanted exercise equipment, and there weren't many hands waving in the crowd. Then 2 days later, it was a poll. If you're having meetings and you're asking for input from the residents, and the residents show up at the meetings, and 2 days later, approximately 2 days later, you put a poll out because you didn't like the results of the people that showed up for input, it's kind of, if I can show you real quick the places that aren't lit on the path. My home is here.
Okay.
The path comes here from Roush Field. It goes over here through a walkway. It goes on a bridge that zigzags, elevation change, comes up and over another bridge that goes over the creek. It comes around and turns. This is not proposed to be lighting. I understand the officer spent a week in class for lighting and that stuff. I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps. If I was going to be someplace, I'd be on a dark transition, multiple trees, rougher terrain with no lighting if somebody was looking for me.
Come back up here on the podium for me, would you? Oh, go ahead.
This also is not proposed to be lit, and I'm under the impression that this is city property from here to here. The only easement is right here, this small section right here, but this is not proposed to be lit. So what you are doing is you're lighting an area from this street to this light, from this street to this light, creating no thoroughfare. Currently, there is a lighted trail by the school district, a path that comes along here and goes to 20th Street, so you can come and connect to this street, all the way to this street. This is lit by the street by the school district.
Okay. I know you're passionate about this, so I want to get all your questions answered.
I guess my thing is, if you're going to put if you're going to spend taxpayer dollars to light something and you're not going to connect it to the streets, you are lighting a piece of land. You are not lighting a thoroughfare. You're not lighting a pathway. You're lighting a blacktop path that has dead ends on both sides of it. And how are you going to use it as a citizen? And the areas you're not lighting are the areas, to be honest with you, that would need lighting if you're lighting it. Those are the areas that are covered by the trees and everything else. I just ask you guys, before you vote, go take a look at it. We asked at the meetings if the people went through there at nighttime and that stuff, and nobody could say that they did, or evening.
I want you to understand that just because there's stuff up there, you know, where they're locating lights, that doesn't mean that that's the final plan to do it. You understand that, right?
I understand that this is a concept, understand 100%.
Okay. All right.
What I'm saying is part of the concept is not connecting the pathway, not connecting the path to be a pathway to the streets. If you're not going to make it so it's a connection, you're lighting something in the middle of nowhere that you don't have a connection to get to. Can you get to it off of Newport? Yes, but you can only walk to the end of that light. Where they're saying they can't put lights around, to be honest with you, is the most elevation, and really in fact, the pathway was so, I'm not going to say treacherous, it sounds a little dramatic, but there's so many people that fell on the pathway, and students Trust me, both my kids wiped their bikes out on it going to school. I mean, adults fall on it. It was constant. The city did improve that part and they replaced the decking on there, but that part is not lit. And that to me would be if I was going to light any part of the path, if I was only going to light a partial section of the path, that's a section I would light. You know?
But again, I want to make sure that we're conceptual at this point, right, Ray? This is all conceptual?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. All right, so I just want you, I appreciate your passion, but work with us, okay? All right,
And we're trying to.
okay.
Except they're doing the stuff and not inviting the neighbors that live along.
I disagree with you, but I don't want to get into open discussion with that. You can call me about this tomorrow, please do. But I disagree 100% on that, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Ellefson, and I live at 3011 Sawyer Creek Drive as well. So I'm going to start with a few different thoughts than what Paul had, but I know that others in our neighborhood are going to present information on the current lighting and exercise proposal for Roush Park. And before making a decision on whether or not to move forward with the proposed master plan, I'd like the planning committee to consider a few extra inputs and questions. So starting with the proposed master plan. So prior to the first meeting on the proposed plan, there was no outreach to the adjacent park property owners who have an excellent perspective on usage and characteristics of the property, including where the flooding regularly occurs. During an early open forum, the consultant that's in charge of the recommendation acknowledged that he hadn't walked the current trail system. So I guess my question is, how is it possible to put a plan together without first researching the actual property? So I know there was a review of the topographical maps, but that only tells a small part of the story. During a subsequent meeting, it was still unclear whether or not the trail had been walked. I know he stated clearly that he hadn't walked the trail at dusk, which is one of the critical times the group who's advocating lights be added, that could be evaluated. So given the numerous times that lighting was discussed, it seems like it would have been prudent to understand where lighting would be most beneficial and how to link that entire loop if the lighting moved forward. So that's getting again at what Paul was talking about, connecting that whole loop. The proposal that was shared with interested citizens did not include any proposed costs. And I just don't understand how we can move forward with a proposal without understanding how much it's going to cost the city or the park specifically. That just seems very fiscally irresponsible to me. It appeared that there was no proposal for specific lights when we were asked about height, placement, and cost. And even tonight, I heard 6 to 8 feet from the officer, then I heard another 6 to 8 feet, and then suddenly it jumped to 8 to 10. So it feels very unclear what we're asking about.
Again, I want to point out, this is very conceptual, just like all of our plans. There's nothing in here carved in stone.
Okay.
Okay.
So we were shown several options for the fixtures themselves. It kind of gets back to that picture that was on the screen earlier. So it seems as though there's been an investigation on aesthetics, but without addressing the more critical question, which to me is about functionality and costs. And again, heard a lot of different pieces of feedback today around what these lights are going to do and how much they'll illuminate. But again, and understanding, Mr. Miller, it's still conceptual, but it seems all over the map at this point. I had asked some questions regarding the proposed plan, such as what's the priority for the master plan? So you've heard a lot about, we've got cleanup on the current property, we've got maintenance for the existing trail and bridge system, we've got lighting, we've got exercise equipment. It sounded as though we didn't have any prioritization in place. Again, I don't know how we can move forward with a plan for the future, especially if it doesn't define the scope or cost that we're talking about. The other thing, as we led up to the recommendation to add lights and exercise equipment to the park, I haven't heard that there's been a study or investigation to understand what the impact is to the current wildlife situation there. And we've talked a lot about it's always been posed as a natural park that has a lot of wildlife. So let me start with a few things that I'd like for you to consider. So we have at least one owl that resides in one of the large trees adjacent to the creek behind the Lutheran Church. I don't know, because I'm not an expert on wildlife, but will adding lighting change the potential for increased activity? Will that displace these birds and these other animals that we have there? We've got numerous ducks, including a female mallard that right now has built her nest on our yard. if we have all this lighting and again, changes to the environment, is that going to go away in the future? We've also had wild turkeys, we've had deer, we've had a family of foxes. Since wildlife is such a big part of this parkland, will the changes that are being proposed, will that impact these animals and cause them to move elsewhere to a place where they can't be enjoyed by the same number of people? During the summer, we frequently see a lot of, and I don't know which name you use, but fireflies or lightning bugs. So are those also going to disappear as we talk about putting lights in? And then when it comes to this exercise equipment piece, so yesterday we took our dog for a walk on the full trail loop. Since we brought her home, we found 3 ticks on her. So my concern is a tick and or a mosquito-laden spot really the right location for exercise equipment? And if lights are added so you can visit the area at or after dusk, do you really want to walk through knowing that that time of day poses an increased risk of being bitten? I've led numerous projects during my career at work, and the number one reason that projects fail is communication. For Roush Park, it appears that communication, especially with the adjacent neighbors and concerned citizens, is a problem. In my opinion, there are a lot of factors which should prevent the current recommendation of adding lights and possibly exercise equipment from moving forward. I would ask that you listen to the concerns of our neighborhood closely before you form your opinion and cast your vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray, I have a question, sorry, playing catch up. This isn't in CIP, this isn't anywhere, there's no budget for this, this is just part of our master plan, and it's conceptual at this time, is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
You'll note in our CIP discussion later, I do have at least a placeholder in 2023 for some Roush Park development. What that money may be put towards will be determined once this park master plan would be developed. But at this time,
I know this is a little unusual, but could you explain to our audience how this plays out, how this plan is just for public input for you guys to, and maybe if John wants to come back, and are you okay with that? Is the rest of the board okay? I feel like there's a lot of concern that this is gonna happen tomorrow, and you're worried that there aren't facts and figures and budgets. That's because there isn't any, okay? And well, hang on, I don't want to do that, but John, could you just come up and explain kind of how this, Ray, are you okay with that?
that's up to the board. Yeah,
Yep,
I'm fine.
Everybody? Yep. I just think you guys would feel better if maybe we explain the process, how this works, that if we vote to move this thing forward, this plan is going to take years to develop. It's not going to happen tomorrow,
There's
so.
already a grant that was applied for lights and exercise equipment on this trail.
Okay, and,
So
Let's
the
keep the
money's
discussion.
already
Okay.
procured.
Okay.
So it is in motion.
okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. So you're absolutely correct. And just to clarify again, this was brought up, the first meeting we walked through the process of where we are, what we'd like to achieve, and where we want to go with this. We laid out the fact that we were putting together conceptual plans. We started off by showing just some natural features of the site, some topography, the wetlands. It was just a blank canvas at that point in time. What we did is explain that we're going to have 3 neighborhood input meetings. That was a public meeting, that was open forum, and was open until all comments were taken. Just for the record, I want to clarify that our firm did not close any meetings or not take comment. So I felt obligated on behalf of my firm to clarify that. From the concept plan, what we were hoping to develop at these meetings is a list of desired amenities, modifications to the property that would make it more beneficial to the public, to the users. What we wanted to do was get ideas like restrooms. At the last meeting, we heard about an archery at the end of the meeting. So we did take input for that. So to develop the concept plan, really, it's so limited. What we wanted to do is take a building block approach to the concept plan here, because coming in with one with athletic fields and one with trails just wasn't feasible. So we took a building approach to it to really gain ideas, to gain input, and put that on paper. The next steps, and what we laid out, was that this meeting would then take place after we developed concept plans that we wanted to get input, of course, from this group. and give us more direction. What we're going to do from here is take more direction from this group, from staff, from the public, to refine this further, which will then allow us to begin to look at light spacing, light heights, things of that nature, finishing some of the details where we would then be able to associate cost. Putting cost to something that has no basis wouldn't give you accurate numbers, wouldn't provide the generation of the progress that we want to see with this plan. Next step is to develop the master plan. That will then go to Plan Commission, that will then go to Council for adoption. So that is correct, no costs have been developed at this point. We definitely need more input. We're very conceptual at this point in time. It was very clearly stated that this was for input to get us to this point, and that there would be much more detailed development after we get input from this group to move forward, to bring to Plan Commission, to take public comment again, present costs, and give us an opportunity to decide if this is going to make it into the CIP, if it's a shelved plan, whatever have you. The direction from here definitely depends on the input received and how we move forward. So costs will be developed, details will be developed much further throughout this. The neighborhood input process is typical with our City of Oshkosh projects, is always the first step to get that genesis input and build from there. So anything else?
No, that's good, but Ray,
Okay.
this is my last question, I promise, and the board's probably ready to kill me, but is the group aware that we need to have a master plan to qualify for certain grants, money, funds, and things like that, and it's necessary to update our master parks plan? Is it every 5 years or is it every 10 years?
Every 5 years.
So
sorry.
this is a process we go through for every single park, so.
And I guess just to add a couple more comments through what John said, we have met with the potential developers going further west, shared this plan with them, and knowing what they're looking at for future development, they are in support of this. They understand the city's desire to expand the trail system to the west. They're going to work with us on that. So we have shared this forward thinking as well, to the west as well as to the north of Sawyer Creek as well.
Right, and the south portion, immediate southwest developments as well, and connections. So, yeah, those are the really important pieces. And again, this is going to give us those tools to insert into capital improvement budgeting, to put into the corp in the next go around. This is the idea that would generate funding, and it would be very transparently clear in that document as to what the costs were, every step, if it was phased, low, medium, or high priority, just like every other park in the corp.
Okay.
That's where we would use this information in the future.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Additional public comments?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Eric Kaler. I live at 3111 Sawyer Creek Drive. Want to give my input as you consider ways to improve the quality of life in Oshkosh. There are 27 homes that share a common border with Roush Park, adjacent to the trail. There are 23 that border the park between the two bridges, from the west side of the school bridge to the east side of the boardwalk bridge. There's one home on Foxtail that is adjacent to the park entrance to the east, and 3 next to the park on the trail next to Newport. I took the opportunity to discover if the residents who are directly impacted by the park plan are supportive of the park plan in its current form, and I presented this petition to them. As adjacent property owners to Roush Park, we look forward to working with helping to develop a park as it has been designated as a passive area with nature playing a prominent role. Development of a park with lighting 24 hours a day and exercise equipment workout stations don't seem in line with a passive nature area. The following property owners who live directly adjacent to Roush Park are opposed to the lighting on the pathway of the park during evening and night hours. We oppose the lighting for these specific reasons. Number 1, in combination with the street lighting in our front yard, the lights in the park will light up all aspects of our home during the night. This will limit the use and enjoyment of our properties. Our privacy will be in jeopardy as we will have to have shades drawn on both the front and the back aspect of our homes to avoid the light pollution. The adverse condition of light pollution from these lights will limit the use and enjoyment of not only our backyards at night, but also inside of our homes. This will lower the desirability of living adjacent to the park and the creek, thus driving our property values down. The proposed lighting had been previously described as being low level and shielded from adjacent property owners. There's obviously some discussion tonight about the height of the light, and there's certain elevations on the south side of the park that are quite higher than the property owners. So even lighting at low levels, whether it's 6, 8, 10 feet, is going to be much higher than some of our homes because of elevation change. There was no specific lighting that is proposed to satisfy the requirements won't light our backyards. Lighting the park will invite the use of the park 24 hours a day, despite the fact that the park in the cities are officially closed at 11 o'clock. Use of the park 24 hours a day will invite criminal activity in our backyards and expose our most vulnerable citizens to victimization. There is no ability or history of regular police patrolling of this park trail. The trail has many sections where there's no clear line of sight from a patrol car as there would be on the sidewalks. You can take a look at the zigzag nature of the trail, and I ask you to tell me which police officer is going to be able to see down that entire trail from the east side with the zigzag and the tree cover. Input from common border property owners wasn't taken seriously into consideration for alternatives to lighting in the park. Despite the objection of these property owners, the inclusion of park lights at night was not modified to protect the interest and opinions of those common border property owners. Here's what I discovered. This was very interesting. Over Mother's Day weekend, I gathered opposition to the park lights in 20 of the 27 homes, a 74% response rate. I was unable to connect to 8 of those homes as they were away from their home when I went to approach them. 100% of those that I connected with are strongly opposed to the lights in the park. They do not feel it will add quality of life and detracts from the enjoyment of the park and negatively impact the enjoyment of the park. Please listen carefully. Out of a total of 27 residences, I was able to speak to 74% of them who all opposed to it. None were in support of the lights or exercise equipment. Second, I was overwhelmed and struck by the appreciation that someone was actually listening to their concerns. There was extreme gratefulness on a personal level that someone took time to actually listen to their concerns. You see, most individuals I spoke to attended the listening sessions about the park development. They certainly wanted to provide input to help develop the park in a way that all could enjoy, but they didn't feel that they were being heard about other opportunities. Many mentioned how it seemed as if listening sessions for the park were ignoring their objections to the light 24 hours a day. And I was at the most recent meeting. I was also struck by the disregard for the opinions for the common property owners, of the common border property owners. I was struck that a park development plan could carry on in such a way as to be so divisive and non-inclusive of the opinions of individuals who are mostly impacted by this plan. I am dismayed that this is being done in the community I raised my family and have pride in. Incidentally, most freely mention the idea of outdoor exercise equipment as being ridiculous, gaudy, unsightly, and a complete waste of tax dollars. There's a YMCA right next to the park that has free membership for the disadvantaged and a 24-hour center fitness that's a mile away that all can enjoy for $10 a month. Every home residence adjacent to the trail and the parks that I talked to strongly objected to the lights and signed this petition. I'll leave this here with you today. Lastly, there are 2 stories of common border residents that summed up most of the interactions that I had with residents. One resident felt as if the lights would make them feel like a zoo animal in their backyard and light up their backyard as trees from across the creek were clear-cut in an attempt to selectively remove buckthorn. On Mother's Day, a mother of teenage children mentioned how she was horrified about how she was going to keep the bedroom windows of her teenage daughter's rooms shielded from lights across the creek, as she has the bedrooms on the back side of her house, which is adjacent to the park. In summary, parks are supposed to add to the quality and enjoyment of life for residents. Clearly, the residents adjacent to the park are not feeling this plan with 24-hour lighting is adding to the enjoyment and use of their park and will strongly negative impact their lives. The democratic process is supposed to protect the interests of all persons in the community. This plan that is proposed with 24-hour lights and exercise equipment has been objected by residents adjacent to the park since it was first introduced as an idea. With such a groundswell of opposition, can you commit to moving a plan along that remains so divisive and not representative of all interests of the residents? Can you in good conscience move forward by advancing this plan with the strength of opposition by those most directed by the plan, the Common Border residents? I respectfully thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll leave the copies of the signatures here for you to consider and entertain any questions.
Thank you.
I have a question. Would the lights be on all night, or would they turn off when the park technically closes at 11?
No, the lighting would remain on because obviously there's things that happen after 11 o'clock that we would want to make sure that the police would keep an eye on as well.
I'm never at the parks at that hour. Do we do that with all the, like, Menominee Park? Those stay on all night too?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Okay.
You can just leave it right up to the stickers. There, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Julie Kiefer. I live at 2810 Foxtail. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Neighborhood Association, and I'm sneaking in here between a baseball game and a band concert, so I'm going to do this very briefly. I've sent you all an email detailing my thoughts on this. I sat very quietly during the input session so that our neighbors along Sawyer Creek could have their input. If you look at that map, you will see there's quite a bit of distance from the backyards of their house to where the lights are proposed. And I would say that the light that's in my backyard on Oakwood is probably closer than what they are proposing and would be a much brighter light. We all buy shades and curtains for our house, and that's pretty normal that we would close our curtains at night. But mostly, I feel like, you know, this is a great opportunity. Those homes have been there, some of them, for 25 years. Mine was built in 94. We have not had a park area yet. There are about 10,000 residents west of 41, and the majority of those park spaces are in West Haven. So for those of us who are west of Oakwood, there really is not a park space. There was a great investment made at Carl Traeger School, and we definitely appreciate the city's participation in that. However, an opportunity for more recreation is always needed. That creates a more healthy community, and it gives great opportunities for families to get out and use those areas. We spent a lot of time early in this process meeting with the YMCA, with Living Water Church, with the officials at the Traeger School, both middle and elementary, and really did our homework on what was being asked for and what was wanted from those partners in the neighborhood as well. And so when you think about here in the fall, when it can get pretty dark by 4:30, 5 o'clock, and be dark fairly dark in the morning as well, for about 6 months out of the year, that trail's not very useful. And for the 700 other parcels in our neighborhood association and for the city as a whole, the opportunity to be able to use that trail for additional hours would be very beneficial. And so I hope that you will consider that. And again, whatever grant was applied for was not received, and there is no current plan to apply for additional funds at this time. Because we respect this process, we will work through the process with your partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel Palnecki, and I live at 1280 Fairfax, and I'm really happy with this concept. I wish it were the plan. Weirdly, I agree with Paul that more lights would be better on those darkened spots. But
Please
if you
continue
wanted
your
lights. So more lights, the better for me. And I would really like lights all the way to connect to the YMCA in the future plans, because kids don't have the driver's license. And, you know, if you have multiple kids and you're scattered all over the city, it's nice for them to have a safe lit path from the YMCA to their homes. And as Julie mentioned, just in that area of 9th Street, Oakwood, and 20th Street, there's over 700 parcels. So that's a lot of houses. And respectfully, only 27 of them are on the border. Again, respectfully, I fence my lawn, I paid for privacy hedges, I use blinds and curtains, and I have a street light in my backyard as well. It's not, I don't think that it's the city's responsibility to provide privacy to those who are so lucky to have that opportunity to back up to a park. So I'm for the lights, I'm for extending the trails. I would like distance markers and directional arrows so you know the quickest way out. And definitely hook up to the Y and lights all the way up to the Y. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Phillips. I live at 3001 Sawyer Creek Drive, and I've lived there for 22 years. Several years ago, under the previous park administrator, we had some trees that were blown down right on the creek. And I called the park director to see how we could get them removed. And he came out and looked at it and he said, well, pull the one back that's over the creek, let the other ones lay. The concept here, it's a nature trail and a trail for the kids to go to school. And I guess I missed when the concept of a nature trail disappeared, and now it includes lights and exercise equipment. We've appreciated it as a nature trail. And like Kim said, there's a lot of wildlife back there. And we've also had a few people come across the creek in our property thinking it was a dog park too. But thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Schutte. I live at 3031 Sawyer Creek Drive. You've heard a lot of comments, so I'm just going to hit some of the high points. If you go back to 2004, 2005, there was a master plan in place for this park. I showed it to Ray and John. I don't think they thought it was. It came from Ellefson and Madison up in Appleton. So it was out there. Anything that you see back at that time talked about it as being a nature preserve. And that's what it was. To enjoy people, to see. Most people that walk that area will only see what is 6 feet on the right and 6 feet on the left. They won't see anything further than that. That's all they want to see. Also too, John, I do have to correct you on something that you said 275 feet away from the trail, the closest one. Well, there's about 6 houses that lay within 15 feet of that trail.
On the east side, exactly.
On the north and also on the west, and there's one within 15, 20 feet on the west side. So these people have talked about the noise that comes from that bridge, from people going through there 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay? So, you know, we don't want people back there. You know, you talk about putting lights in. I'll give you an example of your Steiger Park, okay? Underneath lights, I think the artists like the lights so that they can create more graffiti back there. You know, and again, if it's a master plan, there should be some details here. You know, The light height, come on, let's decide on something. I think people would be more open to knowing what you're gonna have than what you're not gonna have. Second, you know, you guys went through there and just clear cut that area. You had two guys out there in a truck, one in a Bobcat cutting away, the other one sitting in the truck. He could have been out there marking the trees of the native species that were there so you didn't cut them down. But no, he sat in the truck, came out every once in a while and blew it away. You know, and I watch the people that go back there. It's a lot of dog walkers that go back through that area. And it's also people who want to, you know, just decompress after work. Leave it as it is, correct it, put some more native species in there. The boardwalk to the west, I think it's a great idea. But you know, I think the second meeting, you said that it wasn't even going to be cleared in the winter. Is that correct?
What are you talking about?
On to the west, where you're adding the boardwalk.
In that area, no, that would not intend to be cleared because people might want to snowshoe or ski in that area as well.
Okay. You know, and the other thing is, which I can't get a handle on from the police department, is really the number of calls that come out there. And Kate and myself talked about that.
Did you request it?
I did try to talk to Tori, and I did not get an answer.
Did they get back to you, or
No.
what did she say?
Nobody got back to me. So do you have any handle on what's really happening out there?
She'd be the person to analyze the data.
Ray, do you have anything?
That would come from the police department.
Okay. But again, I would really say that, no, you need to go back and you need to work with the other people, just not certain groups. Also too, Scott, are you still a member of the Sawyer Creek?
Yes, I am.
And I see that as a conflict of interest in your voting tonight, and that you should not vote for her.
You lost me when you said you didn't want people back there, so speed up, please.
Well, people back there all times tonight, and that's why I'm asking. Tell me these incidents. What's out there? Nobody can tell me that. I think it should go back, be reworked, talk to more people, talk to the residents, and get answers. Thank you.
Could I clarify something? So we are not voting on anything tonight, correct? We are just talking about the concept plan and if we want to move forward and refine this a little bit, correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm Rachel. I live at 2950 Roushfield. It's actually right on the crosswalk. My property does not border the park, but it is on the crosswalk of the park at Roushfield. Personally, I work 8 to 5, 6 months out of the year. I can't walk my dog on the park because I get up too early and it's too dark, and I come home and it's too dark to walk. I don't feel safe walking there. That is why I would like lights on the park. I would also like to see maybe some trash cans if possible, some doggy bag placements. I know that there's a dog park on the north side in Winnebago Park. It's just a little too far for me to try to go up there and let my dog out. But there is take a bag, leave a bag kind of things up there, and I think that works really well. I would love to see that in place here, because I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten a bag or my dog poops more than once, and I'd love to clean it up, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And there's so many times when I walk by and there are piles of dog poop everywhere along that trail. And I don't think it's my responsibility to pick up after other people, if only because I'm buying my bags, so I don't really want to waste my money picking up other people's poop. Also, I would love to see the trail expanded. I don't think anybody's contesting the expansion. I think a lot of it's more on the lights and how it affects the property in the back. Personally, before the removal of the buckthorn, I couldn't see those people's houses. I couldn't see the creek with all the vegetation that was on the path. I walk that path all the time, and I don't know how, with everything that's been taken into consideration and according to the lights, to try and not have the light pollution, how there would be light pollution other than if you live right next to the trail where it meets up with the street. I'd also like to see lights, if possible, on the bridges. It would be very helpful. That bridge by my house gets very dark at night because there's so much tree cover and it has not been cleared. I don't know if that's a city issue or if it's because the tree's on the private property, but it would be nice if that could be cleared a little bit more. It takes probably 2 days or more for it to dry down there. So, I think that's it. Any questions? Oh, I did remember one more thing. I feel like I've been the youngest person at every single one of these open meetings, and I feel that a lot of the young families in this neighborhood are not being represented very fairly. And every weekend, I see probably 90% young families using these trails, and I have a feeling most of these families work the same hours I do. So 6 months out of the year, it's very hard to continually walk the same streets over and over. I get very bored doing that. I'd like somewhere else to walk my dog other than city streets that are like a 10-minute loop. This loop from my house in the circle is about a half hour. It would be nice to find somewhere or be able to walk on the path in the winter feeling safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Bring it back to the board for any further discussion and questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Ray, is this the only nature-type park we have in the city?
No.
Okay, so we have other ones that are a lot like this one?
I would say not the same size, but we have North High Conservancy up by North High School. We have Glatz Park down essentially by Artie and Ed's. Those are the two main ones that I...
Okay. Do we have lights on any of those?
No, we don't have lights on those, but there's not existing asphalt trails and so forth. Other trail systems, Stevens Park will be getting lighting. Their neighborhood association actually has requested lighting, and that's in our CIP. Trails in South Park, Menominee Park, neighborhood parks. Some of those that have the existing trails do, Steve. I'd have to look in our
Yeah.
plan and let you know which other ones.
My name's John Carl. I'm the husband of the lady that first talked. And
Your address?
Pardon?
Your address?
Oh, my address?
Yeah.
Same as hers. So far.
Right.
3081 Sawyer Creek. I am in agreement with my wife, everything she said, and what most of the people here said tonight. There have been some, like the one just previous to me, that wants to walk her dog down in the park. She's got a lot of other streets she can walk her dog, like other people that want to walk them at night. I don't see that you should put a lot of weight in this kind of opinion. And the other thing has to do with opinion of you people here at the table, that the number of us that really enjoy just being at the park, living near it, is a vast minority to the people that have voted on that, say that, what's it called, coal poll vote. You know, there's so many people out there that don't care about what we care about, the minority. When you got this whole majority of people voting the way that doesn't affect, on an issue that doesn't affect them because they don't live where we live. This is sometimes called the tyranny of the majority. We should have more of a vote because we bought these, I did, I've only been here 2.5 years, bought the house because of the scenery, the nature preserve, and on the map and the that I saw on the internet at the time I bought the house, it was called the Roush Nature Preserve. And now I suddenly hear these meetings that I've been to now, for quite a few of them, and there's been no change in your plan. Every time you said the same thing about the lights, increasing some trails and so on. No change, same thing. So I'm worried that you're not going to listen to us because we are in the minority. Thank you for listening to that.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay. Anyone else on the board have any questions?
Can
comments?
I make some comments? I just want to say that I do live in this neighborhood. I'm not impacted like some of these other neighbors. My house does not border the trail, although we use the trail extensively, and I think it's a great neighborhood amenity. It's one of those things that helps stabilize and strengthen any neighborhood when you have an amenity like this. Some of the suggestions of the neighbors, I think, have evolved over time and have been documented on this plan. I attended 2 of the 3 public meetings that were held. It was very passionate, just to say it lightly. I can understand the perspective of the neighbors there. However, I think John at Rattler has done a phenomenal job of listening to those concerns and reflecting them on these plans. I just draw your attention to the northern border of trees as a shield, I think, has been an add-on to the plan, if I'm not mistaken, based on information that was originally voiced at the meetings. I think everybody that was at the meeting that wanted to offer some input was given the opportunity to do that. We asked for that to be done civilly, and we accomplished that, I think. In full disclosure, I am on the steering committee for the Sawyer Creek Neighborhood Association. I'm not sure how that impacts any vote. If it does, there are other layers of government that make approvals well beyond this committee, so I'm not sure that's a conflict. I do agree with Mr. Ellefson about the lights on that western boardwalk, which I think makes sense. And I completely agree with Officer Mann's assessment on Septet. Historically, there have been some problems on the trail. At one point, we had some gang activity on the trail. That's been a number of years ago. During my tenure, we didn't see that, towards the end of my tenure there. But lighting and adequate lighting, I think, would help. From the best crime prevention measure you can do is good lighting. And I think Rattler's plans of that directional lighting and that border trees, I think, in my opinion, adequately address some of the concerns of the neighbors, which I certainly understand. Not to minimize any of their perspective, but I think sometimes, based on my experience and other neighborhood problems that we've had, sometimes we get all worked up about issues that never come to fruition. And I think the evolution of this plan, as John listens to all the input and takes it down, I think has shown some progress towards a lot of the citizen input. It's a great amenity in our neighborhood, and I certainly would like to see the future growth of that as well. And it looks like it is with the connections. It's all with future growth in mind, and that's what builds stable neighborhoods. So that's just my comment.
So with this being in the 2023 CIP, we're just conceptually talking about it now, but the 5 years from now is still the time frame in which we would see something happen?
That would be the earliest. As you know, projects in our CIP get bumped based on the needs of the city. So again, I put a placeholder in, as we did with 2 other parks that we're looking at developing. So it's all depending on funding, basically. There are some grants potentially for the trail extensions that if we get some grant funding, then some of the projects move up typically. So it all depends on funding. But I guess what I'd like to hear from the board is, John needs to kind of go back to the drawing board if you want changes, revisions, adding lighting along the boardwalks or certain areas, taking lighting out, taking the exercise equipment out. We're not to that point yet. So that's what I'd like tonight, so that John can start working on getting you back to a final concept, so that then he can start putting together a full document, the restoration of the sites that we removed the buckthorn, the budget numbers, the maintenance of the trails and things out there. Those will all be part of the plan.
So, I worked with John on a project. I'm currently working on one at UW Oshkosh, and lighting was an issue with that one. And John, you guys provided us with some really interesting, kind of like the map of how the lights actually look on the fields and how all that looks. Is that something that you could provide the board and the public so that they can actually see the technology that's there and the lack of spill that actually exists with the new LED lights and all that stuff?
Yeah, and that's actually the city's ordinance that we're following to prevent that. You're not allowed to spill, so we're not going to be able to even do that. So what we developed at the UW Oshkosh Recplex project, some of you are familiar with that, was the 70-foot pole lighting cut off at the property lines for the athletic field. So what we would do is produce that same mapping based on the lighting levels that's desired. We'll work through Ray with the department to get feedback, to get direction on how much lighting, the intervals, and then produce those, Tony, those maps. And then also the glare spill as well. That's what you see when you look at the light fixture itself. That's what we'll be able to produce, as well as not only a photometrics map, but a glare spill map, so you can see how far away you'd perceive that. And that's something we fully intend to provide as Ray mentioned, as we move this plan forward. Yep.
Thank you.
My only other comment or question was regarding the exercise equipment. Does that exist anywhere in town besides County Park? I've seen it there. Do we have that other places?
No, it's strictly at County Park at this point.
And do we have any indication from County Park how it's been used? I know that's a hard number to quantify. I see those
Mr.
out
Herman
there.
could probably provide some. I've heard just from social media and some of the reports that it's been fairly well used, but I'm not out there as much as Steve might be.
It just depends on the time of year and time of day. Some exercise groups have come out there and used the equipment. It's very user friendly. It has the rubber matting foundation below it, and that is like 10 stations, depending on which kind you buy, and that. But I'll just relay a little bit with the county park. And Rattler was big and involved in that. The light invasion, they put in all the lighting along the walking trails and along the edge of the roadway, and it borders neighbors just about as far away as the neighbors here, and we've not gotten any complaints whatsoever. So I think it's that fear of the unknown. It happens a lot. Change is always hard sometimes. And I do think that, the key thing, and Officer Mann brought it up a little bit, is, SubTED is built on the principle of taking an unsafe environment, making it safe. How do you do that? If you're using something at night or want people to use it at night, you're going to have to light it a little bit. And it's not going to affect the nature the way it is. But, at the same time, it is important for me as a council member to listen to our citizens. And I always try to put our citizens' comments first. And, this is a big area, and this is a growing area. We've just annexed some more, or made some territorial changes for future growth to the southwest side of the city. I'm thinking that if we move forward with this plan, with the lighting, that we do need to follow what the one gentleman said about making that connectivity, so that there aren't those dark zones, there aren't those things, and make it as safe so that if kids are at school after hours and they're walking home using the trail, that they can feel safe in that environment to use it that way. And I think there's some things that can be tweaked and added to this. And as Mr. Miller said, it's a concept at this point. There is no budget put together. It's just more of a sense of direction for Rattler to continue to move forward. I'm not so sure a nature area as this really needs the exercise equipment, because exercising is the nature trails and walking in that areas. The county park, I'll just use that for an example. The county park does not allow dogs on the nature trails. You can't walk your dog in the county park. You can only take it to the dog park. But yet we have people walking their dogs in the county park, and the parks director refuses to bend on that because of the issues that's been created, and that's why we have a dog park. Providing bags and things, I don't know if that's a city responsibility or not. We don't own the dog owner owns the dog. So, putting bags out, we don't. We have that program, as she mentioned. Where we have people, they got a big box, and you could do that, leave your plastic bags here.
I don't want to be the guy with the job picking it up.
No. So, I think that fear of the unknown is what really drives a lot of the concerns of the people, and I think until we get a better handle of the whole project, what the cost will be, exactly what type of lighting, you need more, as you mentioned, on the Bollard side, but maybe that addresses some of the concerns of the light invasion. I know it's worked fairly well on the Riverwalk. I don't think we've had a lot of damage or a lot of vandalism to the Bollards, but
We actually have. We talked about it at one of the public input meetings when the lighting was discussed. We have a number of maintenance vandalism issues with the
Okay.
bollards.
All right.
And that's why we need to figure out the light height. 6 or 8 feet probably isn't tall enough because a kid is gonna jump that high, and I've seen them jump and, do things. So 10 foot probably is gonna be the minimum that we'd have to start looking at.
Yep. But I think expanding that lighting would actually be a bigger benefit than just this little area that we're looking at. But if we move forward with that.
Yep.
I mean, and again, you said there's other boards and commissions that would weigh on this conceptual plan as it moves forward. There's still plenty of opportunity for public input, whether it's to this board yet or to the planning commission if it gets that far, to city council and it's on the CIP if it makes it that far. And so there's a lot of opportunity for open dialogue yet. It's not a closed program at this point.
I like the idea of the lighting. I think there should be more. I agree with Steve. I don't know if this is the right park for the exercise equipment. One of the other 2 parks that we're talking about developing might be a better spot for that. I do like the idea that was brought up about the directional signage. If you want to go to the Y or whatever, I think that might be helpful to the kids too, especially the younger ones that are trying to get around. So, support.
Any other comments from the board?
I'll just agree. I like the expansion of the trail. I like the idea of lighting, but very cautiously lighting, like making sure that there's no spill. And then I also am in favor of not having the exercise equipment. So,
Can we just get a consensus? Is the board pretty much nix the exercise equipment at this point, or?
I don't see a need for it. I mean, you're out there to get exercise. I think our goal is to keep this as natural as possible.
And that's not a problem. Again, it was brought up by some of the residents, and I have had other residents bring it up to me, but we're not tied to it either way. So I think John, at this point, will plan to remove that, so. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, then John will work on adding some additions and taking out the equipment and start moving forward. You've got some good direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank the citizens for coming up and speaking, because I know sometimes that's not an easy thing to do. Having been on the council for 8+ years now, it's hard for citizens to really, but they're passionate, and we want citizen engagement. And if you haven't heard of POCO before, I brought up at the last council meeting that I'm a little concerned that there aren't enough people utilizing it, but you can sign up for it. You can get it on your cell phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, and you'll be notified of when there's surveys put out by the city of Oshkosh. And working with the company that we contract with, for like in this case, Ray would have worked with POCO to put those 2 questions together. So there is input. It's not just staff making the decision on the question. They try to work around what we're trying to get to and get the answer to. And it's in its infancy. We got 1,100 people, but I would like to see 5,000 to 6,000 people signed up for that. So you can really say that that's a community-wide usage.
Just to give everybody some idea, then we'll probably bring this back at our May meeting, most likely June or July meeting, depending on John's schedule and so forth. So you'll see it up in one of your next meetings here. We'll come back with a refined.
Number
Someone
two, just capital improvement.
We want to, there's a citizen has a question. Do we want to move on or let them ask it?
I think this will come back around
Yeah.
Okay.
for additional
Yeah.
Yep,
comments.
it'll come back to you.
Okay. Let's move on to capital improvement program.
Okay, in your packet is our annual discussion of the CIP. It's the 2019 to 2023. And if you've been on here, you're familiar. If you've been on this board for a while, you're familiar with this process. What we do is we'll take a look at the priority projects that we had in this year's 5-year CIP. If they got bumped back, we'll bring those back to you. There may be projects that may not have been in last year's plan that we become aware of that we feel need to be included. What I'd really like the board to focus on tonight is the next 2 years. That's what the city manager and the city finance director focus on, are trying to budget the next 2 years in the CIP. But we did want to give you all 5 years out so that you know if there's not a project planned for the next 2 years that we're recommending, that it's somewhere coming forward. So with that said, I'll walk you through 19. And these, again, we kind of did put in our priority order as far as staff goes based on safety, maintenance, some of those issues. So the first item that we really feel we need to tackle is at Menominee Park, Little Oshkosh Playground is pretty much outlived its life. It was constructed in 1997, and
Can they leave if they want to leave?
Yes.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the Little Oshkosh was constructed in 1997. As you're very familiar, it's a wood structure. It was an old Leathers. Leathers was the company that built it out of New York. Typically, our playgrounds, we try to replace every 15 to 20 years. So this one's over the 20 years, and because of its wood, and I know there's issues with things that take place there and having the police being able to see decent lines of vision and so forth. But for our guys, it's very difficult to maintain. So what we're looking at, I don't have the year, but the city did already borrow $100,000 a couple years back because Southwest Rotary was working with us to do a major fundraiser to get some additional dollars to put towards it's be a $400,000 project, but then they were looking at a $100,000 endowment for maintenance. They have been able to do some fundraising through their Rib Fest and a couple other projects, but that fundraising has really gone to a halt. So we need to do something out there, mainly for safety for the participants, but also maintenance and so forth. So what we are suggesting to the council is $400,000 to renovate that project. Just to give you an idea, that's the size of that facility compared to which new one did we just do? Like a Seasand and Sailorland at Menominee Park. That was about a $125,000 project, roughly. So we understand that this is a major playground that I think the community would like to see a large site there again. We would plan to put in the rubber surfacing out there, so it's a large project. This $400,000, we had budgeted a project in 2019 for the north side of Rainbow Park. We had intended to do a new shelter with potential indoor storage for the golf course carts in the off-season. Not having to worry about the golf cart storage, we are going to suggest that $400,000 that we had earmarked be transferred from that project to this project. So just to give you an idea, it was in there, but we're suggesting a new project for that dollar amount. Sorry to go on for long on that one, but the second project is Oaks Trail repaving. This is the trail up on the north side of Menominee Park. It is pretty much a gravel potholed mess. What we would look to do is, this is pretty much the materials cost. We would work with our streets division. They would actually do the paving. This is similar to what we do out at the cemetery. We annually request funds out there for the materials, and then we work with the streets division to do some paving. So this would repave Oaks Trail on the north end of Menominee Park. And feel free to take a ride out there. You'll see just how bad it is. The next item, Bowen Street Fishing Dock renovation. This would be to, again, remove the lumber that was used to construct it, and we would use the composite type decking that we've been using on the Riverwalk. For this project, we do have a DNR grant for 50% of that project, And we do need to use those grant fundings either this year or next year. So I will be pushing hard to get this project. So it's a $30,000 project, but half of that would be funded by a DNR grant.
Ray, Bone Street's a pretty big dock. I mean, what are we doing there? Sorry.
We'd be removing the wood structure, wood
On top
decking,
and
the wood
leaving-
decking. Yes,
and-
we'd leave the piers and everything.
Okay.
But then we'd put the composite on there.
Thank you.
Yes. The next one, if you all recall, restrooms have been a big issue for the park system. The Common Council and Mr. Roloff essentially have 1 year we've been trying to do each a restroom in one of the parks. West Haven Park is the one that we are suggesting, and roughly based on the numbers we're seeing in our current projects, $130,000 to renovate that. And then we start getting into a lot of the playground replacements. As we were doing our Corp update, we noticed that the city between 1999 and 2004 went through this cycle of replacing the playgrounds. So you're going to see that a lot of the playgrounds that we're putting in here are hitting that 15, closer to the 20-year marks. So we're looking at Stegbauer Park play equipment and surfacing, Congress Avenue tot lot, and that number I believe includes replacing the fencing around that small tot lot, 44th parallel play equipment. And then we get into the Riverside Cemetery road repaving. This is the projects that we try to do every 2 years. We request $25,000, and Bill then works with the street division to do some of the road repairs out at Riverside Cemetery. And then we have the taking root funding. The council and the city manager have been utilizing some of the healthy neighborhood funding for that the last couple of years, and we're going to request to continue that. One good thing, and Bill has been mentioning the last couple of months how much grant funding that they've been able to get. It helps us when we can leverage some dollars to get those grants. So I guess I would take any comments or questions before I'd move on to 2020. If there's thoughts on moving things around, or if you got any questions specifically, Chad or I can hopefully answer those.
The 130,000, is that, have we ever done a restroom for $130,000?
Yes. The most recent one, the one we're doing at Fugelberg, was just under 100, but that one's a smaller restroom facility. Tech Miller, Red Arrow have all been around the 110 to 120-ish, so we added a little bit for inflation.
How are we doing for shelters at West Haven? You know where I'm going with this. Hanging a roof on this thing or an overhang? And
Well, this is to renovate the existing. So
Oh,
we do,
okay.
There's an existing restroom. We go in and take care of demolishing the interior, and then we put high, more efficient lighting and ADA compliant things. So no shelter availability.
So for the Menominee Park, Little Oshkosh, are we thinking more of a traditional type of playground equipment with the board in place? Or is that something that would still be in discussion?
Yeah, we would have discussion about that. A couple of the gentlemen that used to work for Leathers and Associates started their own company, and we've actually worked with them 3, 4, 5 years ago when we first started having this discussion. They've done this in other communities where they come in and they'll do a similar type project like Leathers did, get community input, work with the kids and say, what would you like to see back in the playground? And you can do a custom build, but that's why we're reaching the $400,000 to $500,000, because then we're having a builder come in. We've already talked to some of the Rotaries, and there's no interest in doing a community build similar to Little Oshkosh. So it's open for discussion, but I think we'd be leaning towards that to try to have kind of a unique
And I think that's
playground.
a smart move. I think that people like going there because it's a place that you can't play normally.
Yes.
So I support that.
So that's the reason for the higher price tag as well. What I can do is we can send out an email. I can have Stacy send out an email with the company, and they've got a number of links for different projects they've done around the state, but around the country as well. So you can get an idea of what they're looking to do. So, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll move on to 2020. And again, as everybody knows, these projects, the council does take a look at the priority that this Parks Board does. And although we may not get all 9 projects, I think we've done pretty good getting our top 3 to 4 usually, depending on the year and the other situations that require funding. So 2020, I don't know if I have, yeah, I did put these in a little bit of order. Rainbow Park improvements, design services. What we'd be looking at here is the design of mainly the boat launch area as well as the parking lot, but also expanding it into the park a little bit more based on potential connections to the Lakeshore site and what's going to take place there. we've worked with the planning and economic development staff on applying for a grant that would hopefully do some trail connections from the end of Pinoqua Street through Rainbow down to Sawyer Street to get people onto the bike system within the city. So if that grant were successful, 2020 is about the same time that funding would become available. So we would be able, 2020 or 21, I think, because in 21 I had Rainbow Park, the actual funding for those improvements. So this would be design for any of the improvements at Rainbow Park. Then at West Haven Circle, we'd have a ball field update. Again, we've been trying to do those occasionally. Parks Department, our building renovation, this is phase one. This is what we've been talking about for a number of years, and the council has actually asked Mr. Roloff and Mr. Urban to assess many of our city facilities. Our parks building is not efficient. It was not built for a Parks Department years ago. So this would be, we'd recommend phase one, which would be purchasing of a property just to the south of us and some initial design work in that as well, I believe. I did put in here, and Steve, you brought it up, I didn't mean to put Lakeshore Park. It's the Lakeshore Site, so you can cross out Park, but it's not the official name, but Lakeshore Site. Development of what potentially will take place out there. At the council's direction, we are not going to do a master plan there until possibly next year. What I plan to do is put in our 2019 budget request is funding to get a master plan going out there, and then some potential improvements that could potentially take place in 2020, with Oshkosh Corp's building being expected for completion at the fall of 2019. That would work right into our planning as well then. West Haven Park play equipment, again, some of the older equipment you'll continue to see us pushing for. Corey Park, we're putting in here for a restroom update. This one's still a little questionable. We're contemplating between, is it even an update of that building or is it a demolish and a new building? That facility is used quite a bit by the soccer groups and the football. And I think that we could, we're working with the transportation department as far as the parking lot improvements out there. So Jim Collins with that department is also looking at scheduling that parking lot for reconstruction at the same time. Menominee Park, we have typically put in a placeholder for some zoo improvements. That might be a new exhibit, or whatever that might be, but some funding to help with additional funding that we eventually get from the Zoological Society and other agencies. And then Stevens Park lighting, this has been requested by their neighborhood association to place more lighting at Stevens Park, and this would be the newer LED models, similar to what we had in the other parks.
Ray, I just have a question. About a year and a half ago, there was some concern about the soil and everything at Red Arrow Park. I don't see anything in the CIP. Are we not going to need to address those concerns at Red Arrow, or?
It is, but it's actually, it's in the CIP. It's not in ours. I think we put it in as a placeholder as part of Jim Collins' parking lot study, because we have to do a major study there to see what's going to happen.
Right.
But it is, but it's not in our
Okay.
project plan.
All
I'll
right.
make sure it is in Jim's though.
Okay, good.
All right, any other questions? I won't go into a lot of detail, like I said, on the other years, because again, if we can try to get some of the projects done in those first 2 years, that's what we'd be looking at. But you can see, after we'd hopefully get the design of Rainbow Park done in 2020, we'd look at the major improvements out there in 2021, which would include a lot of the things in our park plan, the play equipment replacement, possibly a new parks building being constructed. The tennis courts at South Park, we'll need to be looking at reconstructing those. Menominee Park and Reach Ball Field design services, what we'd be looking to do is start the design work for that project so that in 2022, we could possibly do the work out there, and you'll see that in 2022. Stegbauer Park, restroom and shelter, that wouldn't be a renovation, that would be a new install. So we'll make that change. Riverside Park, Cemetery Roads, and then Menominee Park, potential tennis court lighting. I'm just gonna keep rolling. As I said, if you have questions, you let me know. Getting into 2022, looking at a big project potentially at Menominee Park, Abbey Park play equipment, and then potentially a splash pad at West Haven. 2023, A lot of these are placeholders. Park site, I just started putting letters to them. Basically, Park Site B is the new park that we accepted or dedicated out on 9th and Clareville, roughly in that area. We talked about Roush Park this evening. Park Site A is a small park that was dedicated down in the corner of Ripple and Oregon. And then we've always has the ever-ending request for a Quarry Park, Dog Park development that we continue to keep in the plan at least. Any questions? If not, I will be submitting that again to the city manager as our prioritized listing. That's all I have, Amy.
Great. Any questions on the CIP for Ray? All right, move on to, any old business? All right. Director reports.
I'll keep it brief. Working on CIP, working on a variety of projects. The Fugelberg boat launch restroom facility, the council awarded that bid last week, I believe. So that project will be beginning here shortly with an anticipation of being done roughly in late August, early September. The tennis court project at Menominee Park, that project was also approved by the council. Contracts are being signed, and I would expect that project to begin by the end of this month. And that one should be completed hopefully by Labor Day as well. So 2 big projects. And then I just wanted to update the board. At the Lakeshore site, right before this last major snowstorm, we did put up some signs stating that the site is temporarily closed. The city ordinance gives the Parks Director authority to do so due to public safety and health concerns and other reasons, construction and so forth. Working with the police department and other departments, we had some individuals, some of the public, going out onto the site while the archaeological study was going on. Essentially, it's a construction site. We were asking them to go off the site, and we got some pushback from that. So working with police, we authorized the temporary closure of Lake Shore, the site. So those signs remain up, and at this point, we're going to leave those up until the construction is done. There's also some other engineering work going on by our staff. Some of the ponds had to be drained so that they could check, do some surveying of the elevations of the pipes and other things, because most of those ponds will be used for stormwater management. They are currently used for stormwater management, so they had to get an idea how much sediment is in there and where the levels of the pipes were and stuff. So it's a temporary closure of that site, but I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. That's all I have to report.
All right, Chad?
I'll just add a couple things that, to copy Ray with regards to the Fugelberg boat launch restoration taking place. As you know, we do have a portalet down there for users at this time since the water is up and the boat launch is being used actively for that end. South Park Playground, if you haven't been on site to date, I mean, they're still working well with Public Works and getting the parking lot done and on schedule for, I think we have our first shelter reservation for the end of May. After around the 30th, 31st. So the parking lot's still on schedule for paving there, but the playground is actually, the components are in, hoping by, if weather holds up, over the next 2 weeks that would be completed and be ready to go by the time the shelter reservations start here with Shelter 1 being done. So turning out very nice around that park facility. Tech Miller Athletic Field, we had accepted bids for the redevelopment of the field and the fencing project that was supposed to take place in early May due to the weather and some additional scheduling issues we had with programs to get additional fields for the time. I've opened that up and deferred that project to take place in the late part of July going forward, so we had fields to work with. It's just too wet up at Tech Miller for us to do much larger construction work at this time going forward. We have some HVAC projects going on that just got completed at the Lakefly Cafe, where we have new heating and air conditioning. We also had some glass serving windows put in there to be a little more efficient for that facility, potentially to have some winter use or things of that nature that may come up, or late fall. Currently meeting with Rattler Corporation, developing the cost concepts and designs for the Spanbauer Field renovation that will take place later in August, that we'll be bringing back to here at a future meeting. And with the Eagle exhibit down at Menominee Park Zoo, currently working with C.R. Meyer to develop costs on that too, for getting that out to see if that can be taking place here later on this year if funding comes forward. So a lot of good things happening from the current CIP, and other groups around the community. So it's nice seeing those things happen. In regards to maintenance items, all of our park facility restrooms are open for the season, definitely being heavily used so far. Boat launches, we've had a lot of work here over the past couple weeks, just with the fish kill out in the Winnebago system has been a challenge to go through. We have a lot of shoreline items as well. I know our zoo staff has spent a lot of times on the lagoon inside the zoo trying to remove dead fish, and it's definitely challenging. So hopefully the public will be conscientious when we're out there trying to work with that too, and trying to make it a cleaner environment for them as we move through the season ahead. Obviously, we're in full force with our mowing operations. Going to be starting out at the Pollock Community Water Park. We have to have that facility up and running for staff training here by May 30th. And Jenny has an amusement training here tomorrow night that we're trying to get everything all set up for that tomorrow already too. So a lot happening. Athletic fields have been very much a challenge for us this spring, just with the weather. Be nice if it straightened out here a little bit to give a little reprieve and let the participants get out there and use them how they're intended. Would sure be nice. So, but it's been a busy spring, and we'll keep rolling with it as best we can. So,
Chad, one question. How are we doing with seasonal staffing?
Seasonal staffing is coming. It's slow at this time. There wasn't a lot of applicants. I think we're set as far as what our budgets allow right now to go forward. I know Jenny will talk more on her end, is trying to get more people hired in the concession ends and working with, but it's been an odd year to say the least. It's getting those specialized positions where we need people that are 18 or older has been a challenge. So we would like to see more of those come through. So.
Anyone have Bill's report? Nope. All right, moving on.
All right. So yes, it's been a very challenging year as far as staffing goes. Usually I have all my staffing wrapped up by the end of March, first week of April, and we still to date are not full staff, which we were supposed to open the first weekend of May at our Children's Amusement Center, and we unfortunately were not able to open. Our opening day will be this coming Saturday, the 19th. So this is the first time in all the years I've been here that we've had a delayed open. The staff that we do have that are 18, and that's a state law to run amusements, they're gone at school, La Crosse, Eau Claire, far away, can't make it back yet. So we're just waiting for them to get home, so they're home now. So Saturday will be the grand opening at our amusement center. And that's also the Kids to Park days on the 19th, so it'll be a big day down at the park. We'll have bounce houses and different kinds of kids entertainment and games. So it should be a great day. Hopefully the lake flies don't get too bad before the weekend, because now, of course, they're coming. So, but I did an interview this morning. If that one works out, I think we're one person short yet, and that needs to be someone who's 18 who can have a responsible bartender's license. So the 18-year-olds are kind of the tough ones to find right now. For the first time in a lot of years, we hired 15-year-olds this year, which is exciting because they're very excited to be here. They're very excited to get into the workforce. Their mom and dad can help them get to work. So I would say a good portion of our staff up at the pool, concessions, and admissions this year are going to be 15-year-olds, their first job. They keep on applying, and I keep on saying, we'll try back next year. And, certain jobs we can have 15-year-olds, certain 16, and certain they have to be 18. So we have a lot of those younger ones that really want to get in the field. So we're thankful for that. But the last week of April, the Diamonds started. Like Chad said, a couple cancellations, nights with the weather and things. But increase already this year, which is great. Chad's done some adjusting on the schedules, and we have some of the YMCA youth leagues on Tuesday nights, and that's been great for us and for concessions and having the kids out in the park. So it's a big improvement already in the first couple weeks of the Diamonds. Then last year our nights were kind of low with the play, so that's been really nice as well. And let's see what else. The first weekend we did open the zoo and the Lakefront Cafe the first weekend of May, and that's been great. It's been very busy weekends the last 2 weekends out there at the park. We've had some pretty nice weather, so that has been good over there. Next thing is the pool opening is June 9th. We have our pass sale nights, which will be on the 4th of June and the 6th of June, where people can come out from 4 to 8 p.m. and get their picture taken, get a pass. All those kinds of things. So that's coming right around the corner. We have Winnebago Community Credit Union again this year as a special event sponsor. So we have all new special events out there, some fun things this year for that. And then followed in July, we have our Tuesday night concert series. If you guys haven't seen that schedule, check our city website or our Facebook page. I think we have a really great lineup this year. Verve is going to be the sponsor of that concert series again this year. And we do have WPS, who actually is going to be a family entertainment sponsor. So every Tuesday we'll be able to have more family entertainment. We always have the bounce houses, but this year we'll have face painting every week. We'll have some type of other entertainment. The Fond du Lac jump ropers are going to be coming one night. They're supposed to be really cool to watch. Richard's Dance Studio, so all kinds of different family stuff. So got a lot of fun stuff going on for that coming up in July here. So, but I think that's it for now. It's a very busy time of the year, so we're just trying to get everything going and open. So,
Any questions? Any other business?
I had
Oh,
two real
Ray
quickly,
does.
then I'll let you go. I wanted to thank David. David, this is his last meeting from Leadership Oshkosh with us, so thank you for participating on the board, and hopefully you got to see some good public discussion in action. And also Carrie Rule has indicated to the mayor that she will not be reapplying for the board, so we'll have a new member in Carrie's spot, but I wanted to thank you for 5 years of service, I think, correct?
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.